Good morning, everyone! Today, I'm going to do an episode of Rico'S Rants, where I review a film that was also requested. I've been loving it, guys. Give me more. Give me more of them. I'm enjoying it. Let's go through the list. I got my coffee. I got my smoke. Let's do this. The clue to what I'm going to do today is a little musical. Hey folks, here's a story about Minnie the Moocher. That's right, I'm doing the Blues Brothers, because why the fuck not? And it was requested, so that's why. Blues Brothers is already is our classic, and last night I did Taxi Driver, so I'm doing classics. I'm doing a classic kind of thing. Blues Brothers, I remember seeing at a very, very, very young age, and I remember being, like, when I was a kid, I was a fan of musicals, and I was a fan of, older type stuff. So I was into, like, musicals and like, Sinatra and stuff like that. So this was a movie I could enjoy because it is a musical, and it's also an adult film. Not to say it's a adult film, but for a young kid, when I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old when I first saw it, and I mean first really sat down and saw the whole thing, not like seen clips. It's got language. Back then comedies were more, not edgier, but everything was sort of new, because everything was like, oh, the censors let that happen. Absolutely a classic. When it's one of John Landis's greatest films. Dan Aykroyd is great. How often do you say Dan Aykroyd's great in a film? Ghostbusters, Blues Brothers. That's more or less it. Not too often where you're like, oh, you know what my favorite fucking Dan Aykroyd movie is? That scene where he's in 50 First Dates. No one says that. And unfortunately, Dan Aykroyd is a great singer, and he can act. I mean, he's got comedic timing. He's great. But all that doesn't compare to the great late John Belushi. John Belushi was a force to be reckoned with. People have imitated him. People have tried to recapture that spark of being the heavy guy who's also, manic and is like a sonic boom. Just Chris Farley was another one. John Candy was more of a nice guy. John Candy was very much like a guy you would sit at a bar with and have a drink, and he'd like listen to all your problems and tell you his life story and be like, hey man, you got a friend, it's all good. Very Canadian. John Belushi would be the guy at the bar being like, let's do some cocaine, and I don't care what you say, give me all your food, I'll still listen to you, I'm a good guy, but we're gonna go out and have a fucking adventure together. That's John Belushi. Chris Farley, same thing. So I remember seeing this at a very young age and being like, who the fuck are these guys? And so I'll give you a quick rundown of what the plot basically is. Jake Blues gets out of prison in the beginning. And there's this great scene where he's getting all his stuff back by Frank Oz. So fucking Yoda, Miss Piggy is like, he's got his perfect Frank Oz voice. He's like, one pair of sunglasses, black, and just like giving him all his stuff back. You don't see John Belushi's face yet, but he's walking through prison. Elwood, his brother, is picking him up from prison, and Elwood is played by Dan Aykroyd. What I found out after doing research is that they're not actual legitimate brothers. They were both raised in an orphanage, which is a big part of the film. And they became blood brothers, which they took of a guitar string and cut their fingers and became blood brothers that way. And they were big fans of the blues, so they just named themselves Blues. And they were raised in part at the orphanage, but also by Cab Calloway's character, who was, I guess, the janitor or something at the orphanage. I think they do more backstory on Cab Calloway's character in the sequel. People don't like to acknowledge there was a sequel to the Blues Brothers. It was called Blues Brothers 2000. Granted, it was a horrendous film. And even Dan Aykroyd was like, I shouldn't have made that. That's what he sounded. That's my best Dan Aykroyd impression. Like, I shouldn't have said that. That was not a very good one. Like, it's the best I could do. I will not try and imitate John Belushi apart from, but that's I'm not gonna do that for this. So he gets out of prison. They reunite, and immediately they go back to the orphanage to pay the respects to the nun, who they call Penguin because she looks like a penguin, because nun. And she's kind of creepy. Like, all nuns, in a weird way, are... You either don't want to sleep with him, or you absolutely do. But either way, you're going to hell. And she has this... She's almost like she's got the demon inside of her, because she kind of levitates and, like, goes backwards in a door, almost Exorcist style. Which was very bizarre. They go and visit them. They find out the orphanage is going to be closed down because they don't have any money. Fucking bad taxes and whatnot, and someone fucked them over. So they said, we'll get the money for you. We'll come up with the money. They have no clue how to get the money. So they said, all right, we'll get our old band back together, and basically have a concert. All the profits go to saving the church, or not the church, the orphanage. So, a good chunk of the film is them tracking down their old band members and convincing them to join up. They go through, and this is the original band that was like on SNL and were performing with them. So they're not finding actors to be in the band. They're finding actual band members that, to be fair, actually have a lot of great screen presence. Like, these are guys that don't act, but do a great job on screen. Jake and Elwood steal the whole show. Elwood is very stoic, kind of the silent, straight man. Elwood Jake is the more crazy of the two, but the thing is a lot of them is just them both standing there not saying a lot. It's a lot of deadpanning, and because they have dark sunglasses, you can't see the expression, but you just get off this non-stop deadpan, just like that kind of thing. But a lot of the highlights is all the cameos from big-time singers and musicians. So, you got Aretha Franklin, you got Ray Charles, you got John Lee Hooker, you got James fucking Brown, and they're all singing songs, and the Blues Brothers, some occasionally will participate in the singing or dancing as background guys. I remember being a young kid and watching this movie and not knowing who Ray Charles was, not knowing who James Brown was, not knowing who Aretha Franklin was, and all of a sudden being interested in these people. Like, I remember asking my mom who Ray Charles was. Like, who's the guy on the piano? Why does he wear the sunglasses? Why does he sway? And my mom was like, he's blind. And that was a whole other, like, he's blind, he can play the piano that good? That's fucking incredible. And I was so young as a kid. There's a scene where Ray Charles, he owns basically a pawn shop, but also like has tons of musical instruments, and the band goes there to get equipment. And there's a young kid, interestingly enough, the same young actor who is in Die Hard as the limo driver, same actor. We'll throw trivia at your way. He's like reaching out, he's trying to steal a guitar, and Ray Charles shoots a gun and barely misses the kid's hand. He's like, "All right, get out of here!" Chases him out. I was so young and so naive that when I was like, he's faking being blind. How good of a shot can he be? And my mom's like, "No, man, like, that's easy to fake and manipulate. It wasn't like real. They just, popped a piece of polyester, like how a little swib come out. It wasn't a real gun. They didn't give a blind guy a gun." But this movie made me totally interested in all the music. In particular, apart from Ray Charles, Cab Calloway. Probably my favorite part of the movie is Cab Calloway's rendition of Minnie the Moocher, which he was the original one to do. So it was a nice throwback, and he's on stage, and he's probably 65 years old, time of his life, having a ball, just going back just like the good old days. So a good chunk of the film is them trying to get the band members, trying to get to like a location to get a gig. And along the way, they piss off a lot of people. They've got cops. Immediately in the film, they get pulled over for running a red light, even though the light was yellow. The cops decide to fuck with them. And instead of just being like, we're going to participate and we're going to comply with the cops, they just drive off. And this is the car they have, the new Bluesmobile, is an ex-police car. So it's black and white, which is reminiscent of their suits and their motif. Basically, white guys and all dressed in black, sunglasses, black fedoras, everything. So now the cops are chasing after them. On top of that, Illinois Nazis get involved, chase after them. At one point, they go to a bar, which is waiting for a band, and they say, "Oh yeah, we're that band," and they're clearly not the band, but they fake it out because they need money and they need exposure and they need a gig. And also the band members need morale. They're all thinking like, there's no fucking way people give a shit about us now. So they sort of con their way into this bar, which is very much a country western, dive bar. And the band that's supposed to perform is very much a yeehaw kind of rustic cowboy western band. And they're singing blues. Immediately, all their blues hits are not working and people are booing them. And then they said, all right, let's do Rawhide. As a great scene where they're just singing, "Rollin', rollin', rollin', Rawhide." And then everyone's dancing and clapping and they're so excited they're throwing bottles of beer at them in excitement. The end of the night, they're done with their show, and the owner says, "Hey, great." He's like, "Hey, when can we get our money?" He's like, "All right, well, let's talk about this. Not to mention all the, you drank a lot of beer, and so I'm gonna have to say I'm taking away your cut from that because you owe us, and you actually owe me about another $150. And they're like, "Well, the lady didn't charge us for the first round, so we just thought, everything was free." It's like, "Oh, no, that doesn't work like that here." And so they're like, all right, I'll go and take a look, and I'll go talk to the band. I'll get the money, and I'll be right back. They immediately take off, leaving the owner there just like, what the fuck? And then the band shows up because they were late, and they're just like, what's going on? He's just like, the fuck you dressed up like that for? He's like, well, the good old boys, damn it. He's like, you're the good old boys? And then now the band and the owner and the Nazis and the cops are all chasing after these guys who are just on a mission from God. That's what they keep saying, because there's a scene in a church where James Brown is the minister and he's singing and very, theatrical and everything. Jake gets a religious epiphany and a religious upbringing, or not upbringing, awakening. The Force Awakens. Where he's like, oh, we should get the band back together. That's how it all starts. So now they're truly thinking this is a mission that God has sent them on to do good, to save this orphanage, to just be better. They get the show going. Then they get a record deal, played by Spielberg. Like Spielberg plays a tax. He plays the guy that is in control of the money for the orphanage getting paid. They go to him. There's this great part where the entire mob that's chasing them is following them, and they're in the elevator listening to a Muzak version of "Girl from Ipanema," which is a classic thing, dun, 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 and they're just standing there, just completely stoic. Get there, and it's Spielberg, young Spielberg, and almost is unrecognizable because he's known for now looking much older and gray hair, but this is young, beardless Spielberg. I had to is that? Oh, it's fucking Jurassic Park, dude! Holy shit! Also, you don't really ever see Spielberg in front of the camera, so. But you could also tell this was almost like a favor for them, because Belushi and Aykroyd were both in his film 1941 together. And also Dan Aykroyd was in Temple of Doom. A lot of people don't know that. Dan Aykroyd was in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Super brief, 1 or 2 line cameo, and it's from a distance. They never close up on his face. You just hear his voice. And he's the pilot in the beginning of the film who gives Indy, Short Round, and Willie, Kate Capshaw, Spielberg's wife, their plane to get to India. And it's really just let me just rewind that shit. Is that fucking... Oh my god, it's Dan Aykroyd. So you could tell, for some bizarre reason, Aykroyd and Spielberg are buddies, and he's just yeah, I want you to be in my Blues Brothers movie. Okay. So, spoiler, and if you've been watching this, the whole thing of this video is spoilers like crazy. They get arrested for destruction and mayhem and all that other shit. So the end of the film is the Blues Brothers with their band in prison doing Jailhouse Rock by Elvis Presley. And as the credits roll, they have the other previous musicians during what's their turn for the credits, like Cab Calloway, James Brown, Aretha, singing parts of the song. It's a great musical. It's a great film. It's funny. It made me interested in a music that I really had I was listening to Sinatra, which is, standard pop, old school pop, but it's also swing and jazz. But I was never into the other elements of jazz and blues and rhythm and blues and stuff like that. So it made me branch out and be interested in Ray Charles and James Brown and and Cab Calloway. So for that, I will always be grateful and indebted to this film. Again, my rating system's all over the place. It's a great film, and anyone who hasn't seen it should see it. I'll give it 4 stars. The only reason why I'm not giving it 5 is because while it's very funny and a very good film, it's not really gut-busting laughing. It's very subtle. The comedy is very, very, very subtle. Like a lot of deadpanness, a lot of, you have to. It's more witty and intelligent and smart than it is gut-bustingly funny. It's not the same type of comedy with John Belushi like with Animal House, which is very much like ridiculousness and crassness and like, oh my god, they went there. This is kind of like, oh, that was fucking funny. It's really kind of like, oh, that was funny. You're more taken aback and surprised. That's how I feel. So that's why I give it 4 stars. One thing I have to mention, and another reason why, even though this was recommended and requested, I was thinking of doing something like this, with like this type of movie, specifically this movie, because Carrie Fisher died recently, and Carrie Fisher is in this film, very young, scary Carrie. That's what I'm going to call her. She plays, even with all these other guys chasing after the Blues Brothers, this one mysterious woman is constantly trying to kill them. Like at one point she, aims, like she's shooting at them, and like they're in a toll booth together, a phone booth together, and she shoots a fucking bazooka at them, and they live. They always are like surviving miraculously, and she drives away, and they just kind of like shrug their shoulders, wipe the dust off them and debris, and just go on their path. Just keep going. Not like, who the fuck was that? Which is funny. That's what I'm saying. This movie is very subtle and witty, where it's like, these guys are almost used to people trying to kill them. They're just like, okay, so that happened, but now what? Carrie Fisher is great in this. And there's a scene where she corners the 2 of them, has her long, like, I'm going to kill you and your brother for what you did to me. We were supposed to be married, Jake, and you left me at the altar, blah, blah, blah. I was a virgin, blah, blah, blah. And Jake begs forgiveness and comes up with every excuse, like, I was late, I had to do this, I had a flat tire, I was sick, I had to go to church, don't fucking kill me. He's crying, and he's just kind of like, are you? And she is charmed, smiles, and says, oh, Jake. And then they embrace, they kiss, he looks at his watch, drops her, and they immediately leave, and she fires at them again. So, Carrie Fisher's great. Carrie Fisher's always been great. She's great in this. And it's just a small, like, let's put Carrie Fisher in this. It's got a bizarre cast, but it's great. It's a great cast. So I had to throw some love for Carrie. Princess Leia, we will always miss you. May the Force be with you. I don't know how the fuck I'm gonna watch The Last Jedi without you, but we'll make it work. It'll be heartbreaking. There won't be a dry eye in the theater, but we will always have your films like The Blues Brothers to go back and rewatch. Thank you for recommending this. Thank you for liking. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing. Love you all. And please check out The Blues Brothers. It's a classic film. Take care, guys. Mwah.